Hi everyone, I'm Tiffany from daisyfarmcrafts.com. That's my website that I started a couple years ago just to simply share the blankets I'm making in hopes to become a grandma. So I feel like I want that disclaimer out there that I'm not a crochet professional, but I just enjoy the craft. And here on my channel, I just have the patterns to all the blankets that I personally have made and designed. So today I really want to show you the border on how to work this. It's a herringbone half stripe. I'm calling this one the Pendleton stripe because it is that Hudson Bay colors, but through more research I'm kind of learning that Hudson Bay, this color would be a dark navy blue, but when Pendleton made their blankets way back when, they put the dark gray. Don't quote me on that, but that seems to be what I'm getting. It's based off of a pair of socks that I actually picked up at the Pendleton store in Portland, Oregon. So that's why I'm using the black, this yellow. I just tried to match those colors as close as possible. So let's get started and let me show you how to get this blanket going. Okay, let me start by telling you first that I'm using Caron Simply Soft with an H size hook, and this is the color Dark Sage. I also am using Sunshine, I'm using Heathered Gray, and I'm using Autumn Red, and of course white. And I did design this project for yarnspirations.com, and they supplied me with the yarn. So I want to put that disclaimer in there as well, that they sponsored this project by sending me the yarn, and I'm always so excited to design something with their beautiful yarns. I've been using them for years, and it just makes me so excited that I've actually been able to work with their company. It's a wonderful company. So I'm going to start just with a regular chain, and you can make this chain any length. There is no pattern repeat, so you can make it any number you want. My blanket finished size is about 32 inches, but for today's demonstration I'm just only going to do a small sample swatch for you because I want to be able to demonstrate the border. Okay, so the herringbone half stitch looks like this. You go into the third chain from your hook, insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through one loop. Then yarn over and pull through both loops on your hook. Okay, so to see that again, I'm yarning over, I'm inserting my hook into the next stitch, the next chain, yarning over and pulling up a loop, and continuing to pull through the next loop. Then I'll yarn over and pull through the last two. Now, if you're wondering how this is different than the double crochet, the step that is different is yarning over. In double crochet, you would yarn over and then pull through two, but we're not doing that. You're just continuing to pull through to the next loop and then yarning over and pulling through two. So that's the one little change. Okay, I'm going to work my way to the end of the row, and in the pattern you make 3 rows of each color. So I'll do 3 rows of white before changing to the next color, and I believe the first color on my blanket is the charcoal. I really did just pattern them after those socks, except obviously I changed up the off-white color to be white. I thought that might look better for a baby blanket. All right, so pause here and get your 3 rows of white done, and I'll come back and, oh, I guess you need to know how to turn. Let me show you this really quick and then we can push pause. So I got to the end of the row, I'm chaining 2, I'm turning, like a page in the book. That's how I was taught. My chain 2s never count as a stitch. I'll go into the last stitch I made underneath both loops, insert my hook, pull up a loop, and sometimes I just kind of pull that loop up, I don't know, gauge your tension, and then pull through the next one, then pull through 2. Okay, now you know how to turn and get those 3 rows done, and I'll pop back on here and show you how to do a color change if you are really new at this stitch and brand new to crocheting and haven't seen that done before. So let's press pause and I'll be back. All right, how'd you do? I wanted to for sure point out that you never crochet into the top of those turning chains. You're just going to work into the last herringbone half stitch on the row. The turning chains never count as a stitch, so they kind of hang out over here on the edge. Okay, we're going to do our first color. Let's add some charcoal in. And changing color is simply working half of the stitch, and before you pull through on the last step, you just lay the yarn right over the hook and pull it through, and you have changed colors. It's that easy. Okay, give yourself a little bit longer tail though to weave in, just in case you had short right there. Chain 2. We will work our way up to the next row, and right there into that first white space that you see, that's the last stitch that you made, and you're going to yarn over and continue for 3 more rows of the charcoal. Okay, so if you are doing a practice swatch, which I always highly recommend, I guess it comes from me designing the blankets. I just like to become really familiar with what I'm doing. It helps with tension. Make sure that you have the right hook size, that everything's going to work out before you really get started. You know, I'd hate you to chain 150 and then you really are uncomfortable with the herringbone, and you know the first couple rows don't look so great. This irons out all those type of wrinkles, and so you're really comfortable with the stitch. Then you're ready to go to start your beautiful blanket. Okay, here I am, that last stitch. You kind of get confused because I know you see those 2 turning chains right there, but just work under this last one right there. I know you'll kind of see a little bit, but it's a little, you know, little bumps. It's okay. Those are just the turning chains to get you up to the next row. It all works out. Okay, I'm going to press pause, and when I come back, I will have all the colors done, and I'll show you how I weave in ends too. I had a question about that this week that some people haven't ever really seen that, and then we'll get to the border. All right, I think I'm actually just going to call it quits right here. I don't need that long of a sample to show you how to put the border on. So I wanted to show you, I just finished this last stitch, and what it means to tie off is to just pull out your loop quite a bit and cut it, and then pull through, and you've tied off. Okay, so let me show you how to weave in ends if you've never seen this before. And I used to think it would be so great to just crochet over the length, you know, when you changed the yarn. But I want to warn you that those ends actually, if they're only just woven under one way, they will come out with a lot of use. I made that mistake, and I saw a baby blanket, not a baby blanket, but a blanket I had made for my niece about 6 months later, and all of those tails were hanging out. So weaving in your ends is really the smartest way to do it, and there's really nothing special about it other than you make sure you're kind of going up, under, over, around, any way you can other than just all in one direction. I mean, sometimes I will get under there and go in one direction for a few stitches, maybe like that, but I will also go back under one and then work a different direction so that they're definitely woven in. So there's really nothing special other than you just continue to hide that yarn within the stitches and try and go under, around, as many different ones that you possibly can, just disguising the yarn as you go. And once I've done that about 4 or 5 times, maybe even 6 times, I don't know, I've lost count now, but just as long as I feel like, okay, that's pretty secure, I've really gone over and under, I'll just pull that, you know, of course, if you've seen me adjust the tension, make sure I haven't pulled anything too tight. And I'll clip that end as close to the work as possible. And then it kind of just hides in there and we're done. Okay, so I'm going to continue weaving in all of the ends. That would be the next step that you need to do after you finish your blanket before we start the border. All right, I have my ends all woven in, and where I'm going to start with, we need to edge the blanket with 1 row of herringbone half double crochet stitch, and it's always tricky when you get to the sides, mainly because you know the sides are really a lot looser than the ends, so we have to adjust our tension all the time, adjust the number of stitches. I still to this day, I think it depends on every blanket you make. I always have trouble when it comes to the sides. Just no way around it. So I will go ahead and start in that, you know, that last stitch that we made. And I will insert my hook. Pulled that, probably wove that end in a little bit too tight, but that's okay. I'm going to just simply pull up a loop and I will chain 2. Okay? And then I'm just going to start in the next stitch and easy, just, you know, work my way of herringbone stitch down this side. And when I get to the end in the corner, I will be working 3 herringbone stitches into the corner space to kind of round that corner out. But then when we get to the sides, that's where it just, you're going to do your best to not put too many stitches and also, you know, not spread them out so much that you get some gathering and rippling. It is the hardest part, I believe, about putting a border on. But I just worked my way to that last corner space. So I will go ahead and right in that same space, work 2 more. That helps me to round the corner. And also this last one I just did kind of counts as my first one for this row. So I will continue to work another one, and I kind of like to insert my hook underneath those 2 turning chains like that. I know it needs one there. And then, you know, here's the herringbone stitch, and sometimes I still like to grab, I don't know, I don't like to split that stitch up too much. Oops, sorry, I've got a yarn over. So I'll kind of come into the side of that, just do it as neatly as possible, and then come down here for my last one. So I feel like some needed 3 stitches per the side, you know, as if there's, you know, there are 3 rows. But sometimes if I just stuck to 3 on the sides, you know, like on this where I've got 3 rows of green, so I'm going to work 3 herringbone half, you know, on the sides, that works out great. But if I continue that, it just sometimes seems that they got too spread out. So just use your best judgment as to where you want. But again, don't make them so close together because your blanket will ripple and gather. So sometimes it's 4 per 3 rows, and sometimes it's 3. That, I know that's, if I knew of a better way to explain that, I would, but that's just kind of just been my experience, is that I just kind of have to kind of get a feel for it. So I'm sorry to my beginners. That's not, you know, a very scientific way, but just get a feel for it and put those stitches in the side. Okay, here I am back to the corner. Phew, safety. And I'll work 2 more in the same space to round that corner. And that actually will count as the first one down that row. And now we're at the bottom and we can see right where to, you know, insert our hook into the bottoms of that first chain row. Go around. Okay, so continue that all around for the border, and then I'll get you started and show you how I made that back loop single crochet ribbing. Okay, I made it back up that side, and I wanted you to know that I'm working the last 2 herringbone half stitches right where I pulled up a loop and chain 2. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually work 3 into that corner space. And then I've got my 3rd one, and then I'm going to slip stitch to that chain 2. Right there, I'm just going to work under one of those. That'll be starting off the edge, okay? Just slip stitch right to it. Perfect. You've got it. So here we go. How did it turn out? Okay, here's my little swatch. And I was going to mention too, you know, sometimes it just depends also on these borders. If different yarn works out differently, and so go easy on yourself and just try and get it as even as possible. Okay, here we go. Here's the good part. Here is that ribbing. So all you're going to do is you just slip stitched over there, and I'm glad you're out of that corner space because we're going to start right there on that side with just chaining up from there 8 times. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now turn your work a little bit. We're going to work back down to that chain with single crochets, just into the top loop right there. Give myself some more slack, sorry. This first one is a little bit tricky to get started, so to hold it and everything. Okay, make sure you get that last one so that you have 7 single crochets on that little chain that you put up there. Okay, you'll see the space that you started in. I want you to slip stitch into the next space that's empty and the next one. So slip stitch over 2, then turn that chain like a page in the book and find that very last single crochet that you worked into. And if you can't find it or you're unsure, it's number 7. So start from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that one. Because sometimes that slip stitch looks like a single crochet. You are going to single crochet all the way up, but only under that back loop. We want that ribbing, you know, we want that, sometimes that it's kind of, in my chevron blankets, I've seen it called cornrow. You know, I call it cornrow chevron, but it gives the ridge. So maybe but it is a back loop single crochet. Okay, make sure you get that last one. Sometimes when you turn, it gets tight on you. Chain 1 and turn. Turn your work again like a page in a book. And work right back down that chain, working 7 single crochets. Now you are free, if you have made a much bigger blanket than my baby blanket size and you want a thicker border, you just chain any number you want. Just keep track of the number so that you make sure you are even on your border. And here's why. Because sometimes when you slip stitch, that 7th one pulls a little tight and you have a hard time seeing it, and it is easy to miss. And then you're slip stitching to the chain and your border starts to shrink on you. So make sure whatever number you do, keep track of it. I chose to chain 8, but there will be 7 single crochets, so I'm keeping track of the number 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I will simply slip stitch into the next empty space and the next one. I'm going to turn and single crochet in the back loop right up the end again. Okay, so I'm going to pause and I will meet you back when I get to the corner because there's going to be just a little bit of a modification for you. Okay, just before you get to the corner, you know how you put 3 stitches in the corner? Okay, this is where we're going to make a little bit of a modification. So I'm going to, continue single crocheting on that last row down towards the row. But here is what I had to do in order to make it around the corner with enough that it laid flat for me. Okay, so when we get to the bottom, so I tell you, I still keep having to find that 7th stitch. Okay, instead of slip stitching over 2, all you're going to do is slip stitch into the very first space and then turn. So you're only going to slip stitch once for around the corner. We're trying to get just a little bit extra rows to make it around that corner. Now, in the next, so obviously in the middle space, we actually are not going to slip stitch at all over to the next space. We will stay in that very space for 3 times. That will help, that will bring us around the corner. So let me show you that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but anyway, so find that little 7th one that hides in there every single time. If anything, that's what's going to slow you up and make this border a little bit tedious. Okay, here's my middle spot. So I will slip stitch to it, work my way back up, and I'll do that off camera, and then I'll show you how. I'm just going to slip stitch right into that corner space. Okay, hopping back on here really quick. I'm back down to that corner space. I'm not going to the next one. I'm going to the exact same space and slip stitching again, turning it around and heading right back up. Okay, making sure I get all 7 of my single crochets. And I will do that one more time before I slip stitch only 1 time over to get that next stitch that's part of the corner, part of the 3 that made up the corner, and that should get you around. And it looks really pretty good. Okay, so let me finish that. I've got one more to do, and then the next, and then we'll move on. Okay, so I've done my 3 in the corner. I slip stitched 1 time to finish out that, and now I am back to slip stitching the next and the next to start taking it down the side. So that is how you get around the corner. Okay, now if you feel like you didn't have good tension, your tension maybe was too tight or whatever, and you want to only slip stitch over just 1 more time, there are no rules. Do that. Nobody will notice. And the important thing is to get enough stitches around to, make sure the corner lays flat. But so just, that's what I'm saying. Like, oh, maybe you feel like you're way back over here and you don't want to do that. That's fine. But it should give you enough to get you around the corner, and you should be fine. Okay, so I think that's it that you need to know. Really just finish off, get that corner, and when you get back over here, you're still going to work your 3, and you'll just slip stitch over there, and then you're going to want to finish your last one up here, tie off, and then use your tapestry needle and attach it to this side that you started right here. So you'll just sew it closed, just like maybe if you were sewing together ribbing for a hat, for the band. No different than that. So anyway, good luck on your Pendleton stripe blanket. Thank you for coming by my website. Here's my finished one. See those corners? How cute they turn out. And thank you as always for all your kind comments and prayers and hopes and wishes for us. And I will just keep, crocheting on. Can't wait for the day to come. And we will see you next time. Okay.